really my honor to be invited to this workshop and share with you the topic about the role of circular economy in tackling climate change. Yeah. So at the very beginning, when they invited me, when Jane invited me to this session, I asked her, like, it's about circular economy, but actually my expertise is in climate change. So I thought, should I just talk about climate change only? But then I tried to link circular economy, the main interest of your participation today here, with climate change, and hopefully that can bring us some new insight in this topic. And my presentation today, I was given like 40 minutes, but I hope that we can leave at least like 5 to 10 minutes for discussion. So actually my presentation is a bit long. Yesterday I tried, at my home it took me 1 hour to finish it. So maybe I might skip some details, but if you have any questions after the session, I'm more than welcome to discuss with you. Okay. So just to give you a bit of background about myself, because you probably never heard of me, know me why I'm here today, right? So so basically my academic background is in economics and also urban environmental management. I did a PhD in Thailand. So actually I've spent like 5 to 6 years in the past in Thailand, based in Bangkok. However, I provided like consulting services across the entire Southeast Asia. You name it, like Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, China, etc. I've supported various enterprises, mainly in their journey towards a climate resilient business. Yeah. So my expertise is in climate risk assessment. Yeah. So I will just touch upon a little bit about what exactly is climate risk and how circular economy can be a solution to this huge challenge of our time. And so let's just move on. This is my agenda today. So I will first of all talk about climate change first and how it is a risk to our business nowadays. And then secondly, we'll talk about how circular economy can respond to all these challenges. And finally, we'll share with you a couple of business cases that's from overseas, but I want to highlight how their solution can answer to some of the challenges that we're facing due to climate change. Okay, so let's move on, and I would like to, instead of me telling you what exactly is climate change, I try to find some clips on the internet, short clip, but I think they explain very well what exactly is climate change. So let's look at this.
We hear it so much that it feels like a buzzword, but it is far from it. Climate change is a real and serious issue, but isn't the climate always changing? What exactly is climate change?
Oh, sorry. Let me just maybe make the sound a bit louder. Okay. Yeah. I think that should be enough. Okay, let's try again.
We hear it so much that it feels like a buzzword, but it is far from it. Climate change is a real and serious issue, but isn't the climate always changing? What exactly is climate change? Why should we care? Well, the Earth's climate has changed throughout history. Most of these slight changes are caused by small variations in the Earth's orbit. But climate change as we know it today is characterized by an abrupt increase in the Earth's temperature. It is estimated to have gotten 1.2 to 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit warmer in just the last century. 10 out of the last 13 years were the warmest on record. 97% of climate scientists agree that this new tendency is not caused by the variations of the Earth's orbit, but rather very likely caused by human activities. That means you and me. And since the Industrial Revolution, we have come a long way. Humans built airplanes, faster cars, developed remarkable technology, and learned how the natural resources around us can be used for our benefit. Although this has led to many wonderful inventions and advancements, like the device you're using to watch this video, or the ability to take a plane halfway around the world, it also means we've increased our consumption of natural resources and in turn released a lot of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Now, greenhouse gases occur naturally, but in excess can be dangerous to our planet. Modern human activities have increased the release of non-naturally occurring greenhouse gases because we have stepped up our demand for burning fossil fuels. The composition of greenhouse gases traps heat radiated from the sun. The more heat they trap, the warmer our planet gets. And as our planet gets warmer, we begin to feel the effects. One of climate change's biggest victims is our oceans. Oceans regulate the Earth's temperature and provide 50% of the Earth's oxygen. But climate change has increased the global temperature of the oceans by more than 0.3 degrees Fahrenheit since 1969. Although a warmer ocean might seem inviting to a beachgoer, it actually has devastating consequences for supporting life at sea. One of those consequences is ocean acidification, a direct effect of increased dissolved CO2. Since the late 18th century, ocean surface acidification has increased by 30%. A higher acid content means calcifying species, like oysters and clams and shallow water corals, are at risk, putting the entire ocean food web at risk. This is bad news for the 1 billion people relying on the ocean as its primary source of protein. Climate change has also caused the sea level to rise. Just in the last century, sea levels have risen 6.7 inches, but the rate in the last decade has nearly doubled. Sea levels have risen because as the ocean gets warmer, it swells. On top of that, glaciers and ice sheets are melting. Antarctica lost 36 cubic miles of ice between 2002 and 2005, and since 1994, each year on average, the Earth has lost 400 billion tons from its glaciers. That's like an ice cube 7.5 kilometers on a side, 4 miles on a side, melting and flowing into the sea. When all that ice melts, it fills up our oceans, and just like filling up a bathtub, the shores can't hold all that water, and coastal regions get flooded. Troubling signs of climate change are increased extreme weather events. Natural disasters like floods, tornadoes, and deadly heat waves are more obvious to humans because of their immediate impact and their sharing of the images in the media. Climate change, as we know it today, is change in our Earth's overall temperature with massive and permanent ramifications. Although its consequences can be planet-threatening, scientists still believe there are things we can do on a personal level to help. Recycle and reuse things. Walk or use public transportation to get to work. Turn off your electronics when you're not using them. Eat less meat. While you're at it, eat more locally grown vegetables and foods. And last but not least, spread your knowledge and concerns about climate change with others. When it comes to climate change, the main takeaway is that it's real. And although we are part of the cause, we can also be part of the solution. We hear it so much that it feels like a...
Okay. Yeah, so I hope the clip gives us a pretty good idea about what exactly is climate change and why is it important. We heard of this is a buzzword today, but not really so much people understand exactly what is climate change, what's the cause of it, and why do we need to care about it. So I think this clip really explained very well. Yeah, and one thing that you already noticed from the clip is that it talks about risk, right? The extreme weather events, the floods, the cyclones, strong cyclones. These actually, it happens like since the very beginning of human history, right? It's not something new, but why is it so threatening when people talk about climate change and link it to all these extreme weather events, right? It's because climate change is causing these weather events becomes more extreme, more frequent. It happens more frequent, and the magnitude of these events becomes more severe, right? So if you look at, I would encourage you, if you're interested in this topic, you can check the Global Risk Report. This is published by the World Economic Forum every year. They did surveys on how people perceive as the future risk in our world, the top risk to our world, the economy, the society. Yeah, and you will notice if you check the report in the past, I'm not exactly sure how long, but maybe the past 4 or 5 years, you will notice that extreme weather events and some other, actually there are some other risk also related to climate change, like biodiversity loss, critical change to Earth system, actually this is the one that is directly caused by climate change. Yeah, it is causing a critical change to our Earth system, and like natural resources shortage, etc. All these environmental issues have been taught to the global risk in this series of reports. Yeah. So I think what's more noticing is that these risks are interconnected. They are not isolated. That's what makes this issue more difficult to tackle. So climate change is driving, like I mentioned, critical shifts in Earth systems. It's this node here. You see, the node is not so huge. It doesn't seem so serious, right? But the fact is, it is interconnected with other risks that may cause larger problems to our economy and society, like natural resource shortages. Like nowadays, like our economy, a production-based economy, rely on natural resources, right? We use a lot of natural resources as our raw material to produce products. But with the critical change to Earth systems, our natural resources faces shortages, and the speed is accelerating, right? And extreme weather events and etc. And you can see that more importantly, it is also inducing other social and economic risk, like decline in human well-being or economic downturn, and also inequality, right? These are all the issues that we care so much about. Therefore, climate change itself is just a phenomenon. It's not the problem itself, but the problem is the impacts of climate change can be far-reaching and widespread. Yeah. So that's the key message I would like to bring to you. And if we check IPCC, so basically this is a United Nations entity that is in charge of the global scientific research on climate change. So every 6 to 7 years, they published a report. So the latest one is called AR6, the sixth report, annual report. The sixth report on climate change. And this report tells us the evidence that they have found so far. Okay, based on the historical data, they have found so far these changes to our society and economy that are actually caused by climate impacts, and they have found pretty solid scientific evidence to show that. So you can see a few things that worth noticing, and later on you will see more examples like water availability and agriculture, crop production, right? So basically in some areas, the production, the agricultural activity has been hugely impacted by climate change, so the production is declining. However, what's interesting is that in some other places, the production might be increasing. Because climate change is not the impact of climate change is not identical across the globe. So in some places, they benefit from climate change because they are getting more water, right? And it might be pretty dry in the past. So I think last year or 2 years ago in Abu Dhabi, there was a flood, right? Serious flood. And that is mainly because they've never met so much rain in the past. So their infrastructure was not designed to deal with any potential floods. So when there's a huge rain happens and it just flooded. Yeah, so that's an interesting thing to notice. So like agriculture, water availability for animal and livestock health, etc. Okay, all these things we have found very solid scientific evidence linked to climate change. And then some hazards like inland flooding, damage to infrastructure, our ecosystems, diseases, mental health, even displacement. That's also an important point. Yeah, especially in some developing countries, or even the small islands in the Pacific Oceans, they are facing. So they have started to move some of their population to other countries because of the threat of climate change. Yeah. So there's a recent example in Taiwan. I don't know if you heard of this, but maybe I will still show you a bit of the image.
交掉了，交掉了。
上平安台房，流到这边，昨天都流走了。
淹水那个玻璃已经被泥土盖了，水都盖冲了，冲走1楼都被淹水了，门都打不开。然后我弟弟就把玻璃打破掉去救我妈妈。
The barrier lake burst. So basically, it's also not something new, right? That happens in the past so often. But the problem is this year there were so many typhoons in Taiwan, and one of the typhoon caused a huge barrier lake in the eastern Taiwan, and we couldn't find a way to deal with it until a new typhoon came, and which brought a lot of rains. That typhoon even didn't pass through that area, but it just brought so much rain, and then the lake burst. And actually, we could have prevented so much damages and losses of human lives, but people were. I guess we need to learn how to be more alert and learn how to act immediately on all these potential risks. Yeah, so that's one thing we need to learn and to live in the future. Yeah, so that was about the past, what has happened. But what will happen if we don't act will be more threatening, right? So also from IPCC's report, you can see that they studied what will happen in the future if climate change continues, right? So one of the examples is the heat humidity risk to human health. So you can see with the darker color, that means in an entire year, how the number of days where the heat humidity will become a risk to our human health. So you can see if the climate change continues, the global temperature continues to increase up to a level like 4 to 5 degrees Celsius. You can see in some areas especially near the equatorial region, it is almost like the entire year people will face a risk due to heat and humidity, a risk to their human health. So that's scary, right? So that's why people talks about that we need to limit global warming within like 1.5 degree ideally, or at least below 2 degree, right? So the situation will at least be a bit controllable, yeah. And another example is fisheries yield. So recently I'm doing some research on tuna, the impact of climate change on tuna catch. So a lot of the people that I interviewed, the fishers mentioned that the issue with climate change is that they can no longer catch enough tuna in the areas where they used to fish. So fishers, they catch fish based on their experience. So they know that, okay, in this area I can catch enough fish for a living, right? But when they go to those areas nowadays, they just cannot get enough fish. So what they have to do is to travel farther to other fishing ground to find fish. And there's no guarantee. They don't know exactly if they will get enough fish. And what is the implication of this phenomenon to their work? Is the fact that their working hours are prolonged because they need to travel farther. They need to spend more time on their vessels. Yeah, and then there's no guarantee of their income. Yeah, so you see that the fisheries yield. So the dark purple one means the yield will decrease. Also near the equatorial region, the yield will decrease, and that's obvious because the climate becomes hotter. So tuna cannot continue to live near those areas, it's just too hot for tuna, so they will shift to northern ocean, and that's where we will have to find tuna in the future, right? In the northern, and that also means undercurrent vessel, they probably don't have enough equipment to cope with colder weather, right? The colder conditions, so they will have to adapt to this change. Okay, so that's just some examples and some scientific evidence on climate change. And then I wanted to link this to our business. Yeah, so this is a quite popular or famous framework. In the past, it's called, so basically it's a task force on climate-related financial disclosures. It is a worldwide, you can say almost like a standard for corporates to when they need to report the impact of climate change on their business. Okay, so it's no longer there, it's replaced by another framework, but I think this graph shows very well how climate-related risk caused financial impact. So we normally look at risk from two aspects. So first of all is transition risk. So I believe you must have heard of like net zero, like governments started to talk about their goals, and then they start to impose some regulations asking us to report our GHG emissions and even having carbon pricing, right? I believe in some of your countries, you would have faced this carbon price as well, right? It poses an additional cost to our business operations, right? So that can be considered as a risk to our business because our operating cost is increasing, right? And then technology, so some companies, especially fossil fuel companies or energy companies that are based on fossil fuels, they are doing a lot of research on carbon capture and storage, which is very costly. It's not commercialized. But why are they doing this research? Because they need to find a way to continue their business while reducing emissions, right? So what they have to do is they have to find, okay, how do I capture the carbon I emitted and store it on the ground, or reuse it, right? But this technology is very costly, and that caused a huge pressure on their capital deployment, right? So that can be considered as a risk to some companies. And market, if your products continue to contain high carbon contents, then because the consumers are also aware of the issue, they wanted to use more low carbon products, and that becomes a market risk to you, right? And then reputation, greenwashing. I believe many of you also noticed some news about some environmentalists sue some companies for their greenwashing activities, something like that, right? And then physical risk, we have talked about it: heat wave, extreme wind, water stress, sea level rise, etc. There are even more physical risks related to climate change. However, these are risks, but there are also opportunities for businesses. So what are the opportunities related to climate change? It's about efficiency, right? Resource efficiency, energy efficiency, and we'll talk about it a lot more later on, because circular economy is exactly about efficiency, right? How do we use our resource, use our energy, use our material more efficiently, right? So circular economy here, it comes into play and can be an opportunity for us. And then energy source, the renewable energy, the cost of renewable energy has been decreasing, right? Solar, wind, these have become more viable on a commercial basis, and low carbon products, green procurement, etc. And then there will be a term that we'll talk about again later. That's about resilience, right? Okay. So resilience is about how we can recover, how we can confront climate change impact and recover from the impact of climate change more rapidly. Okay, so we'll talk a lot more about it. An example is like disaster insurance, right? With the insurance, we can recover the economic losses from these disasters faster and easier, right? So these are just some examples. Oh yeah. So basically, all these risks and opportunities, it directly affects our strategy planning, our risk management, and then it also has implications on our financial impact in terms of cash flow, right? How do we fund all these activities, or whether these activities cause a loss of our cash, right? And then that would also be reflected on income statement or even balance sheet if we need to make like important capital investment, etc. Yeah, so that's pretty much about it. And then so we then link all these impacts to circular economy. And before I show you another important video clip, I want to first of all mention about this race to net zero, or race to zero for mitigating climate impacts. Because we were just talking about the risk, the serious threatening events, but what exactly we need to do? And the most important of all is to reduce our emissions, right? That is to mitigate our emissions, so such that climate change will be slower. It will not disappear for sure, but it will be slower if we can emit less emissions, and that is why people talk about. Basically, based on the IPCC's research, if we want to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, we need to reach net zero, okay, within this century. That is based on scientific evidence. So that is why all the countries, a lot of countries, like mentioned here, 110 countries have pledged a net zero target. Yeah. However, most of the targets are not legally binding. What does that mean?
Yeah, voluntary.
Yeah, that means it's fine even if we fail, right? There's no obligations for us to meet those targets. Even if we fail, it's fine. I mean, from a legal perspective, it's fine. Yeah. So you can see that if we look at all the nationally determined contributions, NDCs, that's basically the reduction targets that all the countries have submitted to UNFCCC. Yeah? If we consider all those targets, we can at best limit our global warming to like 2 degrees, okay, 2 degrees. But even worse, if we only look at those implemented policies, because even in NDCs, some of those targets are also just say, not really fine, and they don't really follow by a given policy or action that they can meet them, right? So if we only look at the implemented policies, you will see that actually the global warming will not be kept within 2 degrees even. It might be around 2 to 2.2 to 3.5. Yeah. So that is why net zero, the race to net zero is important and continue to be emphasized, right, everywhere. So now we look at how circular economy tackles climate change, and this is a clip published by Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I believe you all will know them well, right?
Climate change is a result of our take, make, waste economy, and until now, we've looked at solving climate change largely by switching to renewable energy. We're replacing fossil fuels with wind and solar power at speed all over the world. But the truth is that the energy transition will only solve half the climate problem. It's like we've been reading only half the book, like we've been watching only half the movie. So what completes the picture? Transforming how industry uses materials and how we manage land. That is, transitioning to a circular economy. It's more than energy. It's about transformation. What does that mean? It means we address things before they become a problem and design out emissions before production even begins. We build an economy that eliminates waste and pollution, keeps products and materials in use, and regenerates natural systems. The circular economy can help address climate change by reducing emissions from industry, land use, and agriculture. So how do we make this transition? By businesses embedding the circular economy in their climate strategies and redesigning products and services. By governments setting enabling policies and putting the necessary infrastructure in place. By investors mobilizing capital towards circular economy solutions.
The circular economy plays a really key role in solving many of the problems around climate change. But what it also does is it builds a more resilient economy.
A complete picture of a thriving, zero-emissions economy is coming into focus. The mission now is to make it a reality.
I think the following slides are more about circular economy, and you probably are more familiar than me, so I probably will go a bit faster. Okay, so when we talk about circular economy strategies in practice, I think these reports give us, and this graph gives us a pretty good snapshot, right? So there are a few things. First of all, we can think of how to reduce the material inputs to our production, right? And then secondly is about how to keep products and components in use for a longer time, right? And then the third, if we really have to retire them, then we can just think about how to cycle these materials back to our production process as a new input, so that it becomes circular rather than linear model, right? And then the fourth one is about regenerating natural system. So these four strategies, actually they are also reflected in the so-called narrow, slow, close framework. So it's basically the same thing, right? First of all, how to use less, reduce the material inputs, right? So you can either refuse, that means not produce anything that you don't need, right? So we try to produce less as much as possible. And how can we do this? We can probably through rethinking our system, right? Like sharing, vehicle sharing. That a very interesting example that I can probably share with you is that I studied at National Taiwan University. I don't know if you have a chance to visit it. If you haven't, then you should try to visit once at least, because it's a very beautiful campus, very large campus, just within the central Taipei. Okay, so as a freshman, when I first joined National Taiwan University, what do we always do? The freshmen in the past, we always had to find a bicycle first, because the campus was just too huge, and you need to travel from one building to another building for different classes, and if you walk, you can never make it in time. You know, you always need a bicycle. So all the freshmen will try to find as cheap as possible, but it has to be a useful bike that can took us from one point to another point, right? But then that was like, I don't know, like maybe almost 15, 20 years ago. Yeah, okay. But nowadays, I think in the past decade, so Taipei has developed a pretty good bike sharing system.
U-bike.
Yeah, U-bike, yes. U-bike, and that how powerful it is. So if you go to National Taiwan University, you will see, along the campus, you will see, I don't know how many, tens of U-bikes there, yellow one, yes, yeah, yellow and white one, right? And it's very easy to borrow, and it costs you like
3,000 for us.
3,000?
That's
Oh,
deposit.
deposit.
Yeah,
Okay.
for foreigners.
Oh, okay. But you can get them back,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, you will, yeah. But for use, right? It costs like $5 Taiwanese dollars for 30 minutes, right? And 30 minutes, that's pretty enough for students to travel. The campus is not exactly that huge, right? You can easily travel from one corner to another within 30 minutes. So it costs you just $5 NT, right? So nowadays, the freshmen, they no longer need to try to buy a new bike just to travel, because what the problem that needs to be solved is the mobility, right? It's not about having a bike, it's about how to travel from point A to point B, right? So I think that's a very important, interesting example here to how do we rethink the system, right? And to reduce that is about efficiency, we have mentioned, right? And then use longer. These are all the concepts I believe you are pretty familiar with. How do we extend the lifespan of products and its part? And then use again. How do we recycle and recover? So I will skip all these details, but I think this graph is interesting. It tries to quantify or assess how the circular strategies, the different circular strategies can contribute to GHG emissions reduction, right? And so you see from in all these sectors, circular strategies can respond mostly to the material-related emissions. What does that mean? Let's take transport again as an example. The material-related emissions means the emissions occurred during the production process. So the car, the bicycle that we're using itself doesn't emit any emissions, right? I mean, car, that's another story, but like take bicycle as an example, right? Bicycle itself doesn't emit any GHGs. However, in order to produce that one bicycle, right, there are some emissions related to the production. So that is the material-related emissions, right? And then when we use those vehicles, right? Bicycle doesn't emit, that's fine. But if we drive a car, it would have operational energy use emissions, right? So that this is what this chart means. And so you can see that the circular strategies can at least help with reducing the material-related emissions, because we don't need so much production, don't need so much products, and we can use the energy during the production process more efficiently, or materials more efficiently, so that helps to reduce the material-related emissions. And some of the strategies can also support reducing the operational energy use emissions. So I think this is a very important graph, right? And I will skip the following slides because of the time constraint, but just to highlight one thing about this one is, I think this report is published by Ellen MacArthur Foundation as well. So they also try to quantify how circular strategy can support emissions reduction in agriculture specifically. So you see they assess the reduction potential of 3 different strategies. And the most important one is to regenerate agriculture by growing foods in a way that improves soil health. Okay, so we will see a business case later on. Yeah, so it's very important actually, agriculture, especially with regard to the use of chemical fertilizers, right? It emits a lot of neutral oxide, and neutral oxide has like more than 200 something more times of global warming potential than carbon dioxide. And that's why it makes neutral oxide so serious issues to us, right? So we need to find a way to use more bio-based fertilizer and using some bio-based solutions to increase the productivity of our soil while also maintain the health of our soil. Yeah, so that these things can be done through circular economy as well. Yeah, and there's a clip I will not play here, but it's about how circular economy can also support net zero built environment. Very interesting one. If you have a chance, you can also, I would recommend you to look at it as well. Yeah, but what I wanted to show here is we have talked about how circular economy helps with to reduce emissions. However, we haven't talked about, because in I didn't put so much focus on this concept, but basically in the science of climate change, there are 2 aspects. One aspect is about mitigation. How do we reduce the emissions? That's about mitigation, yeah? Mitigate the speed and impact of climate change. Another side is about adaptation. Adaptation is about how do we adapt to a new environment, an environment that is affected by climate change. So like I mentioned, climate change, it is no return for us. Climate change happened and it will continue to be with us for a long time. So while we try to mitigate climate change, we also need to learn how to adapt to this new phenomenon, this new change to our ecosystem. And with this adaptation, we can then become more resilient. Right? So that is a concept. Basically, in the science of like risk management, we talk about vulnerability. So that is how vulnerable we are, or our economy are, to climate change. And that is, normally we assess this through exposure, like whether we are exposed to climate change. Like in Taiwan, obviously, we are exposed to climate change due to the fact that the islands on the pathway for the tropical cyclones, or the typhoon, how we call it, right? So we are exposed to climate change, and how sensitive we are to climate change. So as you can see from the previous example I showed to you, we are pretty sensitive to the impact of climate change, right? When it happens, we don't know how to react, and the village was flooded with mud and water, right? It cannot, the school has to be closed for a while in order for them to recover, etc. So these are the sensitivity. And that makes us vulnerable to climate change. And so circular economy principle is trying to reduce our reliance on virgin materials, right? Like I mentioned, and we try to use less energy or use less raw materials and try to use them more efficiently, right? And then so we don't need to rely so much on natural resources, and we try to regenerate our ecosystem. All these things can help us to become more adaptive to the impacts of climate change. So for example, even when when there's a typhoon happens, what's often happen afterwards is that your supply chain got cut, okay, from a business perspective, because the road might be cut off, so you can no longer transport your goods or your raw materials, right? And so you have to stop operation. However, if you adopt circular economies to some extent, you might be using some of the materials from your used waste, right? And then you can probably continue your operation even when your supply chain was cut off, right? So that is just a simple example of how circular economy can help us adapt to the impact of climate change and eventually become more resilient. Yeah. So that is something. And then 2 examples I put it here. The first one is about Fairphone. I don't know if you heard of this.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Right. It's already quite famous nowadays. I think it has been maybe 10 or almost 20 years ago, right?
20 years ago.
Maybe. I think I had 2 Fairphones, the Gen 1 and Gen 2. I had it when I was studying in Europe. I think it's already 10 to 15 years probably. Yeah.
Which started in Taiwan or?
No. It's a Denmark brand. Denmark. Yeah. So that's when I studied in Europe. I had a Gen 1 and Gen 2. But what I wanted to bring your attention to is that Fairphone in the beginning it was just about human rights. Yeah. They talk about fair trade, they deal with all those human rights issues. But now they are also emphasize the environmental impact they can make, because they assess and they notice that the users of Fairphone typically use the phone for 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
Is anyone's phone? Have you used your phone for 5 to 6 years here? Anyone? You? Well, that's pretty nice. Well, okay, that's pretty nice. But I believe that's already longer than most of the other people, right? Because curious about security, I believe you have more conscious than other typical population, right? Especially like iPhone, right? Every year they have a new gen, and then people just change to a new phone, right? So before we just use 1 and 2 years, and then they will change your phone. But they assessed and noticed and found that the greenhouse gas that can be avoided from using their phones longer than other people is the amount of avoided emissions is around 1,540 tons of CO2 production. Okay, that's pretty good, right? So if you're interested, you can check their impact report, and you will see how they explain how they adopt all these strategies in their business model, right? And then the final one, okay, we have a little bit of time. I will probably still show you this. This is an example from the agriculture. It's like how they developed a new bio-based seed coating technology to enhance the resilience of agriculture. Yeah, so let's also look at this one.
Today's world is faced with the challenges of climate change and food security. Lucent Bio is pioneering innovative crop input solutions that help decarbonize agriculture and support the transition to sustainability.
Science is the foundation of everything we do. Our team of experts continually pushes the boundaries of sustainable crop nutrition, seeking new ways to optimize plant health.
Lucent Bio is proud to announce an innovative seed coating technology based on biopolymers that are derived from crop residues such as wheat, pea, and oat hulls. Our innovative technology delivers nutrients to seedlings in an innovative way while demonstrating our commitment to a circular economy.
Through extensive research, we have enriched these natural biopolymers with essential nutrients, creating plastic-free, non-toxic, biodegradable seed coating that increase germination rates, promote expansive root growth, and optimize shoot development without the need for safener. The precisely engineered nutrient delivery system activates the microbiome, resulting in an improved bioavailability of nutrients for young seedlings, fostering a stronger crop growth and unlocking yield potential.
Our commitment to advancing crop nutrition using a circular economy approach extends beyond our innovative seed coating technology to also include granular micronutrients and controlled release fertilizer coating. Through strategic partnerships, we actively co-develop custom formulations of our technology with industry partners to boost crop performance and the bottom line in a sustainable way. If you share our vision and would like...
Okay, so that's pretty much about it. And you can share more information on the internet regarding this company. Yeah, so basically their solution helps to enhance agriculture nowadays. Okay, I know we're running out of time, and just maybe see if you have any questions. One question, and then we move on to the